Intelligence. What does it mean to be truly intelligent? Is it possible to awaken and develop intelligence in ourselves and in our children? Hello, I'm Kitty Hilton, and in the next few minutes we're going to take an amazing journey, not to some far-off land, but a journey into ourselves, into the most subtle and perhaps least understood areas of human development. We're going to explore the awakening of our own intelligence. Our guide will be Joseph Chilton Pierce, the author of 6 books, including Crack and the Cosmic Egg, his national bestseller, The Magical Child, and most recently, Evolution's End. For more than 30 years, Joe has challenged audiences around the world by questioning why, as human beings, we haven't developed to our full potential. He's convinced that nature has a plan for the unfoldment of intelligence. It's a plan woven into every cell of our body, and one which we are just beginning to understand. Let's join him now, along with a group of parents, educators, and healthcare providers as they explore the awakening of intelligence.
I would say that intelligence is possessed by all living organisms, from the first mitochondria, amoeba, right on down. And it's the ability to respond to life for our own well-being and continuity, to avoid that which is harmful and to move for that which is beneficial. That's the basic intelligence on which life rests, and all creatures possess it. The more complex the creature, the more complex that intelligence becomes. And yet at root, it's always that which moves for appropriateness to our well-being and our continuity. Intelligence, we can say, is in us heart-centered. Intelligence is connected with the deepest intuitive roots of life, the matrix of our being. It's of you might say, the dark interior, the rather mysterious interior of life. Intelligence is essentially feminine in its nature, if we could use that kind of a polarity. It's subjective, it's interior. On the other hand, intellect is objective, it's exterior, it's outwardly driven. Intellect is brain-centered. Intellect is analytical, it's logical, it's linear, it's analytical, it's constantly asking why, taking everything apart, and loving to put things together in new ways that have never existed before. It's inventive. And so this brain-centered, objective intellect is a highly specific form of intelligence and is evolution's latest achievement and comes about through the latest evolutionary additions to our brain structure. We can say, and this is very risky, and I realize that, we can say intelligence is essentially heart-centered and feminine, asking for appropriateness to life. Intellect is essentially brain-centered, objective and masculine, and asks only about life's possibilities. Is it possible? And if it's possible, intellect goes for it, without regard to its appropriateness. For instance, today, here in the United States alone, we're producing annually about 9,000 new chemicals that never existed before in Earth's history by intellectual process. Now, unfortunately, 90% of these chemicals prove to be violently carcinogenic, and in playing with them, we are producing 100 million tons of violently toxic waste dumped on our own nest every year in just the United States. All the other countries are trying to overtake us and outdo us on this. Now, very briefly, this is because of this strange new historical phenomena of a total concentration on intellect devoid of what? Devoid of intelligence. Asking only, is it appropriate? Is it possible? Never stopping to ask, is it appropriate? Now, we look at the word intelligence, it has many, many different meanings. In us, because we are developmental creatures, our intelligence is developmental. And as our intelligence develops, it opens to more and more fields of intelligence, different forms of intelligence, even though at the basis of this intelligence is always that underlying appropriateness. Is it appropriate to our well-being? Howard Gardner. Some of you might know the work of Howard Gardner. I think he's one of the most brilliant guys we have going today. And he's at Harvard. Tufts, wears a number of hats. And he's come up with a theory of multiple intelligences. What he says is, in effect, we don't have this general intelligence of a human, which then learns these different subjects according to how intelligent we are. No, he says these, what we're considering different subjects, are intelligences in themselves, independent intelligence. Gardner lists such things as musical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, out of which language comes, mathematical intelligence, spatial intelligence, and so on. Recently, he is rumored to say, and I have no other than hearsay to back this up, he is rumored to have added an intelligence, and he says we must recognize a spiritual intelligence, the intelligence of the Spirit. I said there's hope for us yet. And so we have all these different intelligences that are independent units. Now, what we find is that these fields of intelligence are what the physicists would call non-localized. Now, this will drive you up a wall. In fact, the whole problem of non-localized energy is driving physicists up a wall. But let's say here's our brain structure, okay? That's my picture of a brain, my cartoon. I'll be making cartoons all day long, which degrade injustice to the awesomeness of what goes on between our ears. But here's our brain. Now, let's say it's got all these neural fields, and we'll talk about what a neural field is in a minute because it's important to know. But it's got all these neural fields operating. We call them the brain sensory maps and so forth. Now, what they're doing is translating from fields of intelligence. Well, where are the fields of intelligence? You can't ask where they are. They're not anywhere. But as our brain translates from these hypothetical fields, it translates them as our direct experience or our localization of that which is unlocalized. So the brain is the translating medium between them. Remember Carl Pribram, one of our great brain research persons at Stanford University, spoke years ago of the brain translating from a frequency realm. What are frequencies? Well, wave fields we call them. A frequency realm which is not in time-space, but as the brain translates from it, it creates our impression of time-space, and we move in this marvelous world that the brain gives us. All right, now, in the same way, we find Gardner's multiple intelligences, or Montessori's multiple intelligences, and so on. As these fields of non-localized energy, the brain localizes them as our experience, and we all share the same world out there because we're all drawing on what? The same fields. Evolution's end starts, first chapter, with a phenomenon we call the Ideo Savant. And recently, Daryl Treffert, medical doctor who's been working with Ideo Savants for 30 years or so, turned out the first real study of them that has ever been done. Scientists have ignored and, in fact, avoided the Ideo Savant at all costs because they challenge every scientific notion we have going. Now, the Idiot Savant, the word idiot meaning they simply are total idiots. They have an average IQ of about 25, and they call them savants, which is the French word for learned person, because in spite of being totally uneducable, most of them have to be fed and clothed and led around by the hand. They're nearly always institutionalized. They're really vegetables, kind of walking vegetables, but they have access to one of the major fields of intelligence. And they have direct access to it, unmediated access to it, but they can't access the field themselves. You have to ask them a question about that field of activity, and instantly the answer will come from them, and they are infallible. They never make errors. Now, how are you going to account for this? These people can't read or write. They can't be taught. Their vocabulary sometimes is almost non-existent, limited until you punch their button, and out it'll come for hours and hours information concerning that field of activity or possibility.